Pursuant to Article 4, Section 19 of the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, NISCA moves that the rule therein be suspended and an urgency be declared, and that the rules of the House be so far suspended so that Senate File number 17 be given its second and third readings and be placed upon its final passage.
I recognize Representative Niska to explain the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This is the Jobs, Labor, and Economic Development Budget Bill. It's been part of the bicameral bipartisan working group, and I believe the version that we are looking at now it was posted on the 8th, and I urge members to support it.
I recognize a member from Hennepin, Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too urge member support.
There being no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its second reading.
Second reading, Senate File number 17.
Second reading. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate File number 17, an act relating to state government, establishing a biennial budget for jobs, labor, and economic development.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, the bill before us funds the Department of Employment and Economic Development, Department of Labor and Industry, Explore Minnesota, the Film Board, Bureau of Mediation Services, several other agencies as well. I've been grateful for the chance to co-lead the charge in getting those agencies funded. This is a good bill that will provide, as I say, funding for those agencies. It strengthens some protections for workers and for employers, I should say. I'll get a chance to talk more about that. This was a significant process, making it through and negotiating with the Senate. Folks may remember that we had funds that went off the House floor to fund competitive grant programs, and we're not planning to fund direct appropriations. The bill is coming back with a significant number of those direct appropriations. As Chair Baker and I are working to reform the system, and the bill does contain a number of reforms as well, even as we're doing that, to put us on a different path when it comes to how we fund organizations that I must say are doing excellent work. It's not about them, it's about the process that we use. And so members, I'll look forward to a spirited discussion about the bill, and we'll get to that. Madam Speaker, thank you.
I recognize the member from Candy, Ojai, Representative Baker.
And thank you, Madam Speaker. Co-Chair Pinto, it's been an honor to work with you once again on this bill. As the co-chair of the labor workforce, I certainly see some wins in the bill. Certainly came down here with larger ambitions to try to make Minnesota a more friendly, more competitive state when it comes to making sure that we can compete. We didn't get certainly to the areas that I wanted to get to, and again, we'll share some information and some thoughts on that a little bit later on. But we did do some things in here that brought new teacher apprenticeship with this. So Rep. Mueller, thanks for all your work on this and others that made this all happen. We did lower the paid family medical leave cap a little bit with the leadership negotiations on that. We did reduce some of the spending in the Department of Deeds to help lower our targets. We had some tough targets to get to. And like Representative and Co-Chair Pinto did say, we had a commitment to take this and do a different way of allocating competitive grants to people that also want to help people get good jobs. People out of incarcerations, people out of substance use disorder, people that are dealing with childhood trauma or kids and helping get into child care areas. That is, I know, a big focus of Co-Chair Pinto, and we worked really well on things like that. Again, there's some things missing in this bill, too. We can have further discussion on that third reading, but again, we're making progress. We didn't get the wins that we needed to really get to because Minnesota jobs are getting harder and harder to maintain in Minnesota. And if we want to have good jobs with good benefits in Minnesota, we need to make sure we give good incentives and good environments to do good things with jobs in Minnesota. That's good for our schools, our counties, our hospitals. Everybody who has to hire people needs to make sure that the government knows the lanes it should stay in and the lanes that employers ought to be in. So with that, members, I do appreciate the work on this again with the committee members. the working group with our senators. Looking forward for more discussion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
There will be an amendment at the desk momentarily. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Schultz moves to amend Senate File Number 17. The amendment is coded A1.
I recognize the member from Morrison, Representative Schultz, to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. One of the main goals that I hope that this legislature would take on this session was mandate relief. For Republicans in the House, in the Senate, we've been looking to make it easier to do business in Minnesota, make it easier to employ people, make it easier to create a growing, thriving economy in Minnesota. One of the topics that I think really deserves attention is always seeking to address the issues that make it easier to do business for small businesses, for the people who are trying to provide for their families, provide products, goods, and services that Minnesotans use every day. And in that, members, we need to do better from a state level to ensure that our regulatory environment meets the moment for Minnesota's small businesses. Unfortunately, to this point, the product of our 2025 sessions has not delivered upon relief for those small businesses, which is the goal that I have here with the A1 amendment, which is the language that would mirror our House position with what the Senate passed before the end of the regular legislative session in the form of Senate File 2300. This bill and this amendment before you right now seeks to address the mandate on small businesses, specifically those who have 4 employees or less, for them to actually be exempt from earned sick and safe time. And that would also include farmers and farms where they have 5 or fewer employees. In addition, members, one big and important thing is that earned sick and safe time has been a very heavy mandate on our public employers as well. So when we're thinking about our school districts, when we're thinking about our counties, when we're thinking about our cities, each of them are dealing with a mandate that stacks on top of what they have already bargained for. And what we're seeking to do with this amendment is ensure that what has already been bargained for as it relates to this sort of sick and safe time, which the vast majority of public employers already do, that this just doesn't go beyond that. And in essence, members, what this provides is an opportunity for us to lower the costs for those public employers that at the end of the day push costs on down to taxpayers, on down to property taxpayers. And this special session hasn't yet wrapped up. And so there is that opportunity to take action to support small businesses, to support property taxpayers, and to lower that mandate amidst the many that they've been dealing with in recent years, especially with the coming paid family medical leave mandate as well. And while I know we still have time to address this, I know that this issue is best dealt with in partnership and collaboration with one another. And while we don't have agreement on this right now, know that we want to continue to fight for our small businesses. So at this time, Madam Speaker, I'm going to withdraw the A1 amendment.
Representative Schultz withdraws the amendment. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File Number 17.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I didn't think we'd get here so quickly. Thank you, Representative Schultz, for speeding us up. Appreciate this bill and wanted to speak a bit to the labor portions of this bill. And what I love about this committee and what is so important about this committee is it sits at the center of all of the things we're doing here that impacts workers, small businesses, our communities, and our economy. And when we looked at the jobs portion of it, we invested in the things that we know are important for our workforce, but we have not yet had that critical conversation about what the workforce is going to look like in the next, as we deal with the Trump-Musk cuts and chaos. But as we look at the labor side, it really is a clear indication of the visions of both parties about how we came in to, and who we are fighting for. What I am most proud of is the work that we did to fight for the economic security and the economic autonomy for workers. So on January 1st, 2026, people will be able to have the time to care for a loved one, time to care when they have a child or a sick parent. And we heard a lot of testimony about that. And when they tomorrow get sick on the job, they will have the benefit of knowing that Earned Safe and Sick, which has been law for over a year, will be there to protect themselves and make sure that they can pay their rent at the end of the month. But what we saw all session was big corporations, was the business partnership, was folks coming in and telling us that employers, that businesses needed more power over their workers, more power over their economy. And what I think is fair is that what this bill does is it says no. It says workers are going to have power on the job. It says that the folks that we have been listening to, that we heard in committee, will have what they need and will continue. So I actually just want to end, because I think this is such a good bill, we should just get to voting for it. There's a lot of good stuff in this bill. There's good stuff in this bill that moves us forward on fighting misclassification, which is defrauding both our coffers, our public coffers, as well as workers. There is good stuff in this bill as it relates to teacher apprenticeships and making sure that we have the next generation of teachers. But it shouldn't have been this hard. We fought tooth and nail for everything, and there is a lot of stuff that is not in this bill that we left on the cutting room floor, as we should, that we shouldn't have had to work so hard to leave there. So, members, this is a good bill. You won't have to hear any more speeches from me about how we need to fight for workers, because this is a bill that does and protect workers. It's a good labor bill. Members, vote green.
I recognize the member from Mauer, Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I wanted to publicly thank Representative Frazier to work with. It was again a pleasure to work with you as we had the same goal of expanding pathways for our educators. We have seen the groundbreaking legislation out of Tennessee in 2021 to have registered apprenticeship programs for teachers. And we have now seen since that 2021, 40 over 40 other states have had some type of registered teacher apprentice programs so that we can expand pathways. And as I said, when the bill came off the House floor earlier, when I saw that this administration was interested in doing that, something that I've been working on for 5 years, I was really excited to be able to capitalize that. And when we started to put this bill together, Chair Pinto came to me and said, hey, let's have you and Fraser work together and make this happen. And you couldn't have picked a better person to work with, because he was able to make sure that both sides of each of this was heard. We were able to really flesh out what we wanted out of the program and make sure that geographic representation mattered, and that we were going to have enough funding to be able to actually make a difference. So I really want to thank Representative Fraser, Co-Chair Pinto, Co-Chair Baker, to champion this for me, something that I really think is going to make a difference as we continue to look for people to come into the education field. Traditional ways are not working. We're seeing how as much money as we put into it for grants and scholarships and all the things, traditional ways are not working. And we need to find ways to attract people to the education field, and people who are already there, who are already investing in our kids. Substitute teachers, paras, these guys right here could become our future teachers, and apprenticeship is one way to do that. We already seen with Representative Clardy's bill with special education, we're already seeing massive success with that. And so I'm excited to see how this is working as it's organically already happening. And thank you, Madam Chair, and Madam Speaker, and I really hope that we'll be able to see this bill across the finish line.
I recognize a member from St. Louis, Representative Warwas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members. The labor bill, for whatever it does do and whatever it doesn't do, as you know, since I'm getting up to talk, is I'm just really grateful that we're finally getting to the point where we can pass the unemployment insurance extension for the miners up in my district. This is a very important piece for my constituents, and I want to thank so many members that stood up to support this from the other side of the aisle, and my colleagues here as well that spoke very passionately about the need for this. It's really important, and so for all the guys and gals over at HIBTAC and Minorca, this yes vote is for you. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Itasca, Representative Igo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, like my seatmate, Representative Warwas, just said, I just want to appreciate that this bill in front of us today does contain the UI extension for our miners up north. And to echo the thanks to everyone in this chamber, but also I want to thank the men and women of Minnesota's Iron Range, because this bill wouldn't have been included today without the tireless advocacy of not only the men and women who have been laid off at Minorca and HIBTAC, but also the men and women of our region who came together with labor, with their representatives and senators of both sides of the aisle to advocate and lift up our issue on the range, and that's why it's in this bill today, and we're going to give peace of mind to our communities back home when we pass this today. So thank you, members, and I'll be voting green as well for this.
I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Zalesnikar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I just wanted to thank the committee members for all their hard work. And while we don't have everything either side of the aisle wanted in this bill, there's many great things. And I echo the sentiment for the UI benefits. And I also am excited to see that there's $1 million that is going to help childcare in this bill. Childcare is something that's affecting the entire state. I sit on the Children and Families Committee, and we talked about how we just don't have enough that we're doing to help families, to help providers. $1 million is going to go to help, this is going to help family childcare and center-based childcare. And families will be able to get up to $5,000 for an early learning scholarship or a CCAP grant that will help them. Many of the child care centers, we have in some of our communities only one child care center, and they'll be able to be eligible for up to $5,000 for a grant. And I'm happy to see that a quarter of that money will come to northeastern Minnesota, where we have a tremendous amount of childcare issues, and it's going to benefit the entire state. In addition to that, we're just doing some things to help in small ways, whether it's nursing assistant programs to help our hospitals and the apprenticeship programs for teachers. And the little things make a big difference. So I just want to thank all the members on the committee and the members in this chamber. I urge you to vote yes.
I recognize a member from St. Louis, Representative Scraba.
On unemployment insurance, all for one and one for all. We're all standing the Rangers here. We're supporting our brothers and sisters on the Iron Range, and I just want to, I have friends from Ely and the Babbitt area that got laid off, and they're all looking for work, and I'm hoping that somewhere in the future we're going to help them, but if not, we still have this bill to make sure that they have a comfortable cushion if they don't have to. I appreciate everybody's support on this bill. Thank you.
I recognize a member from Hennepin, Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I just wanted to get up to say, Representative Mueller, I appreciated working with you as well. You had this thought and idea, and we had conversations about it since the day we got elected. So it's been, I'm glad that we're here for the finish line, looking forward for the green vote on this. And outside of that, I think this bill has done a great job of looking forward in terms of what we're looking at to ensure that our economy works for everybody here in Minnesota. So I'm voting green. Please vote green with us.
I recognize the member from Candy, Ohio, Representative Baker.
All right, Madam Speaker. So this is third reading on my bill, our bill, Chair Pinto, and again, there are good things in this bill. As I mentioned earlier, most of you know I'm a small business owner, have about 30, 40 employees. So I live this world every day, facing what it is to do. And again, we have some good things in here. We did shrink the size of the spending that we're doing in the department. We are changing the way we are helping folks find dollars to train workers so that we can employ them in our small businesses. But I think maybe my comments on the third reading is just to say we certainly didn't do enough this year to help businesses maintain and sustain the ability to keep employees going like we think we need to, because there are many of them that are leaving the state of Minnesota because of the way our policies are affecting them. That is the fact. That is something that's happening. I wish we would have had some information that we could have found clarity on the non-compete that I know is super important to Representative Greenman. That was an item that I know that she fought hard for, but to have a complete ban of a non-compete in the state of Minnesota is not good for Minnesota and the technology world that we have enjoyed over the decades, and just the technology and research. You think of these large companies that have done amazing things for not only our state, our region, our country, and the globe, but non-competes are an important part when done right. We couldn't find the right. And I think that Representative Niska worked really hard on that with others. We have to come back to this because this is not going to be good. You might have seen the May 14th, 2025, just a few weeks ago. Medtronic laid off 20 people at their research lab here in Minneapolis. And that's a big deal, folks. That is a very important company to us, very profitable company. But what we are going to start to see are companies making decisions about certain components of what their business model is, and they might go somewhere else to do it. And they might not just stand up like I am and fight and yell for it, because that's what Minnesota companies don't do it that way. They just slowly kind of slip away. I've been talking to companies with this kind of thing, with non-compete, because I didn't know even a ton about it before I got into this one here, because this was more of a labor discussion the last couple of years, and I've been more on the workforce job side of things. So this has been a learning curve for me too. But this non-compete is important for us to look at some of the best paying jobs in the state of Minnesota and the best companies that have done very good things. And again, if we don't fix this, these other companies are going to slip away. A company is located here in Minnesota, a Bloomington company, 1,200 employees in the state of Minnesota. Right now, they're down to about 1,050. And you know what? 100 of those jobs have went elsewhere quietly because they can do it cheaper. And that's what they can do because they have to stay competitive in the world that they are in. So this is something we just can't ignore. We did not get a chance this year to talk in depth about earned sick and safe time. Representative Schultz tried to maybe bring up an amendment today. We know that there's some global agreements. We didn't want to, take this out too long. But members, earned sick and safe time is something that a lot of companies have built into their very robust programs already. And because we couldn't change some of the language that was offered in a bipartisan bill in the Senate, it didn't even get over here to be discussed. It couldn't get into our conference bill because members of the Senate were just not going to have it. And we never got a chance to really talk about why that was important for very generous companies already offering very good programs, and their benefits could meld in. And we needed this language, though, to allow that to happen for those companies that were already leading the way in this important area. So we are going to come back someday to talk about why earned sick and safe time needs to be right-sized. And also, it needs to be thought of about how it's going to work for public employees as well, and public unions and collective bargaining agreements. You just can't go around collective bargaining agreements, folks, in public unions where they're paid for by the public property taxes like our school districts. If you just want to start writing the benefit programs for collective bargaining agreements, this is not the body to do it in. But in 2023, when you decided to pass the paid family medical leave bill, you should have thought about how is this going to affect our school districts and anybody that has collective bargaining agreements. So a year from now, we are going to be sitting here talking about what are we going to do now for the school districts. That is going to be coming like a steamroller to us. We heard about it loud and clear this year. Nobody wanted to get serious to talk about those benefits to those public employees and the collective bargaining agreements that they have worked on for decades to get it where they wanted it. So that is coming, members, next year. Stay tuned, that's a big deal because it's going to really affect our schools especially, which then is going to affect cuts in our schools, which then is going to affect our kids and how they learn. Because the only thing schools can do when they don't get more money from us or their local property taxes is the only thing left is to cut labor. And that is going to hurt our kids. So we didn't get far enough, nearly far enough, to look at even looking at an exemption if that's what they wanted to do. That's a miss on our part, too. I noticed again recently, I want to talk about these labor issues because this is one of the most important things that I wanted to do this year, and we just didn't get far enough. But again, in St. Paul, and again, daycare centers, unprecedented daycare centers are closing in the great city of St. Paul, which is sending families scrambling. It was in the Star Tribune. I know my good friend, co-chair Dave Pinto was quoted as well. And again, this is an alarming thing. These are great centers that have been around for just decades, 60, 70 years. But they're noting, again, this is from Sandcastle Early Learning Center leadership, described the closing as just insurmountable financial and operational challenges. And they actually they noted new policies like including earned sick and safe time and the upcoming paid family medical leave program that are compounding the challenges of keeping child care centers affordable. Again, that also goes along to say a couple years ago when we had included free daycare for our public schools with our pre-K and 4-year-olds. That was the gravy that the child care centers really needed to make this work. Well, now a lot of them are just staying in the schools and they don't have that at those child care centers. So those are really important facts that we are going to be addressing. And the one thing we shouldn't keep doing is just pumping money into the system of child care support when on the backside we're killing them to try to keep them employees where they can afford to do the benefits that they feel are right for those employees. Guys, we can't have it both ways. You got to make sure you give that operator a chance to be a great operator, and just don't pile more money on top of it, because if there's a year like we have this year and we have to do cuts, you'll see just overwhelming closures because the money isn't readily available every single biennium. And we're seeing that clearly this year. And finally, I'll wrap it up, Madam Chair and members. Again, paid family medical, I know, was the pinnacle of what you really wanted to protect. Again, it's a good benefit. It's a benefit that a few other states are offering. I'm not discounting that having time at home with new families is not a bad idea. It's not. But the way you built it was so robust, so expensive, it already went up 20% before it left the gate. Members, do you know Department of Economic Development hasn't even finished making the rules yet, and this is going to start in 6 months? Do you know that businesses, when they start planning their benefit sets, they need 6 months or a year to start planning what's the next benefit set, and they don't even know what the rules are yet. Businesses are worried, they're scared, they're angry. They've got a lot of anxiety because they want to do good things for their employees. They want to get it right, and now they're desperately afraid to not make a mistake because they don't want to get in trouble with the department or the Department of Labor. But the rules aren't even baked yet, and they're trying to figure out what does this look like in a few months. So we have a lot of work to do to try to make Minnesota competitive again, because Minnesota is losing our edge. We have a fabulous workforce center here. We have fabulous working ethics here in this great state. But if you have to defend a very partisan policy that happened 2 years ago, you know there's going to be changes coming, but because it didn't get bipartisan support to stay and stick. And we didn't do that this year. So to the businesses out there that I said I was going to work our tails off, and I know many members here tried to do that. I tried to get members on the DFL side to work with us on even just some of the smallest changes. And they really had no interest of really doing that this year with paid family medical leave. We're going to keep working this angle. We're going to keep at it because we do not want you to leave the state. We do not want you to shut down. We do want you to grow, prosper, make a profit, because that's what makes Minnesota great. But we need to do more on this, and we need to make sure it's the right-sized program to keep our families happy, to keep our taxes lower, because this payroll tax is coming, and it's not going to be easy to pay. But we have a long way to go. So, members, thank you for allowing us to try to get through this very divided and also equally shared government system in this session. This was a very big deal. We got through it. I don't think anybody loves everything that's in every bill. I certainly don't. I don't think my colleagues on the other side like it either. But we did stop a lot of things that were important too, that would have hurt businesses. But it's important to recognize businesses are not the enemy. Don't think because you own a business that you're ultra wealthy, ultra rich, and that's what I hear a lot of on this House floor. My gosh, if you could see what a lot of us do, sometimes we're just buying a job. But we got to make sure we stay in a competitive environment so we can stay in business here in Minnesota. We cannot let Minnesota lose our competitive edge. Remember this, members, when you go home over the interim, and talk to your school board members, talk to your folks that are in this area, talk to the counties, the administrators about what this will do to them too. How is this going to bake in with paid family when it comes to the collective bargaining agreements? You need to know that, because when we come back next February, we're going to have to talk about this. So I do hope we can support the bill today. I'm going to vote in favor of this bill, but we have a lot more work to do. And we have to get serious about getting these kind of benefits written by the government and not employers to get it to be right-sized if you're going to include everybody. Because this is a dangerous way to go about the road of being a competitive state here. So, members, let's do a green vote. But again, there's a reasons why you don't need to support this either. And and we'll come back to this next year. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize a member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Chair Baker, thanks for the collaboration. Members, thank you. Chair Baker, I was in sort of a kind of gauzy, genial, happy mood, and then you brought up childcare and early learning. Always gets me fired up on it, which is great. I'm going to get to that in a second. But I do want to note, members, the many bipartisan reasons to be supporting this bill, just many of the pieces that are in this bill. Some of them have been mentioned. Representative Bakeberg has the proposal regarding the STEM ecosystem, to make sure to bring young people into careers in the STEM fields, so critical for us. The construction industry is being supported. Representative Berg had a proposal, and Representative Nelson, several others. Mental health, I know, an issue regarding that Representative Nelson was advancing. Of course, we've heard about the UI for minors, so grateful to Representative Pete Johnson for his leadership, and the members in the GOP as well standing up on that. I know it's so important. Vocational rehabilitative services, a program for folks with disabilities, making sure that they have access to employment, a high priority for Chair Baker. Thank you, Representative Rayrauer, Representative Hicks, for your leadership in that area. The misclassification enforcement that Representative Greenman has led so much on, which, may I say, is very important for employers as well. Employers doing the right thing, of which so many of us are representing those employers, making sure that they are defended when they're doing the right thing, paying their employees the right way. And then that leads me to early care and learning. Proposals from Representative Selesnikar mentioned that, Representative Liz Lee, Representative Chair Katiza-Watun. Representative Baker, I feel like, Chair Baker, I feel like child care and early learning is such a great example in our society and our economy of a sense that folks have that the system is rigged and does not work for them, that the economy does not work for them. I read that article about the program in my district in St. Paul and had conversations with them. And what they've talked about is the challenges of making the economics work when you have parents paying in the most challenging time of their lives, workers receiving incredibly low pay, and people ask, where does the money go? And the answer is because the economics do not work. They wouldn't work at K-12 education if we didn't have public support in some form. They don't work in 0 to 4 as well. And one thing I am so grateful for about this bill, and thank you, Representative Lee and Chair Katiza-Watun, Representative Selesnikar, is the recognition that this is a workforce development issue. It's an economic development issue. I mean, members, that is incredibly important, and I'm glad that we're kind of putting a stake in the ground in this bill to say that this is an issue that is important in this area, as it is also in the area of education and in children and families as well. Members, that leads me then, Chair Baker brought that up in connection with paid leave and with earned sick and safe time. And it's actually helpful to think about this situation. We're talking about early childhood educators as an example of a kind of employee that are paid, I think it's the lowest wage you can have with a high school diploma. And the question is, if they have a baby or their family member gets cancer or they get sick, do they have the opportunity to take care of that family need? That's a question we're answering for those who work in the early childhood education field, which, by the way, could not be more important work than brain building for babies and for our society. But it's not just them. It's all those low-wage workers and all those workers in our society who are entitled, who say, look, if I have a baby, my family has cancer, I have cancer, I get sick, I should have the opportunity to take care of those needs. And we know that in the other societies around the world that have paid family medical leave, that it is better off for the entire society. This is supported by labor. It is coming on January 1 for paid leave, and thank God it is coming. Minnesotans have been waiting years and decades for that to start. Members, when this bill was voted off the House floor with a majority of House members, there was nothing in this bill on paid family medical leave. There now is. Negotiated by the leaders, there's a reduction in the cap and the premiums. When this bill was voted off the House floor, there was nothing about earned sick and safe time. There are, in fact, changes to earned sick and safe time in this bill demanded by Republicans as part of negotiations. They're included in this bill. They don't include everything in Representative Schultz's amendment. Interestingly enough, one of the provisions in that amendment that got withdrawn is actually currently in the bill that we're about to vote for. So however you voted as the bill came off the House floor, this bill has changes to PFML and ESST that were not in the bills that came off the floor. Are they as many as my Republican colleagues would want? No, they're not. But boy, are they, does it leave the programs in place to meet the needs of Minnesotans as they are crying out and screaming out for us to meet? Yes, yes, they are. These are programs that, in fact, make Minnesotans stronger and our state stronger. Members, I think that we have a sense, just sort of looking nationally, people have a sense that the economy is rigged. against the kind of small businesses that we represent. I've seen you, Chair Baker, how hard you work for your small business, you personally, how hard you work, a sense that the economy is rigged against those small businesses and against individuals. I, for my part, and I know from my colleagues as well in our caucus, we believe in empowering people and individual people. People to have the chance to be with their families if they have that baby or the family member gets sick. A chance to say, hey, if they want to walk away from their job and go to another job, they have the chance to do that. That's why we stood up against exemptions on the ban on non-competes, to say, look, employer, you negotiate with the employee, but if the employee wants to leave, let them make the money to take care of their family and to have the food and pay for their rent, et cetera. We believe in empowering people and giving them options. And members, those of you on all the other committees, I think I said this when the bill passed off the House before, you are doing workforce and economic development work. Those of you in the transportation area, as you're making sure that there are opportunities, and those of us looking out for transit funding in the transportation area, that is empowering people to have that option. Certainly, my colleagues, and boy, I miss you in the children and family space, you are making sure that little kids are growing up and that kids are protected along the way. In the K-12 space, in the higher ed bill, and in all the other areas, you do that work. We simply are in charge of this particular piece of it when it comes to DEED and DLI. Members, there are so many reasons to vote for this bill. I know it doesn't go as far as some of you may want. It goes farther than it did off the House floor, and there's so much good stuff in this bill. Members, let's come together and let's vote green on this bill and move our economy and our workers forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the name of the member participating remotely.
Olson.
Senate File 17, Olson votes no.
Olson votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 96 ayes and 37 nays, the bill is passed and its title is agreed to.